What's up everybody? Welcome to the Wealth Game Nation. My name is Vedo and I'm here to help you better understand the wealth game and become part of the Wealth Game Nation. Last year, I took a bold leap into the future, predicting major economic factors for the year 2023. Now, it's time to face the music. Did I hit the jackpot? Or did I miss the mark completely? Join me in this video where I will review my predictions for 2023 and make my forecast on 2024 on the same economic factors. Buckle up everybody, it's prediction time. First, let's see what are the major economic factors I was giving my prediction on. Gross domestic product or GDP. In simple terms, GDP measures the monetary value of final goods and services, meaning those goods and services that are bought by the final user and are produced in a country in a given period of time. For example, a quarter or a year. A good GDP growth rate is between 2 and 3% per year. Next is Consumer Price Index or CPI. Again, in simple terms, the CPI measures the overall change in consumer prices based on a representative basket of goods and services over time, for example, monthly or yearly. In other words, the Consumer Price Index measures the inflation. A target rate for inflation is between 2 and 3%. Next is the stock market or the equities market. If you don't know what that is, then we have another problem entirely. As we're all aware, stocks are considered higher risk investments and the value fluctuates significantly. The average return for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years has been around 10%. Then there are bonds and bond yields. There are different kinds of bonds, but the typical government bonds, such as US Treasuries, are often considered low risk and have provided relatively lower yields compared to riskier assets like stocks. The historical average return for long-term government bonds is around 5% per year. Next up, real estate. Historically, the long-term average annual appreciation rate for residential real estate in the United States has been around 3 to 4%. However, this can vary widely depending on the specific city or region. Then there's also the ROI from rent, which is around 4% per year. Next factor is interest rates. In my opinion, this is the alpha and omega of economic factors, one factor to rule them all, just like the ring in the Lord of the Rings. This economic factor makes almost all other economic factors move. Warren Buffett once said, interest rates are to asset prices like gravity to the apple. Over the last few decades, the average federal funds rate has ranged from around 3 to 5% per year. Then we have monetary policy, which is also often referred to as the money supply. This is the total amount of money available in an economy at a specific point in time. Monetary supply is a crucial concept in macroeconomics and is often monitored by central banks to influence economic conditions. Central banks use two different policies. QE, or quantitative easing, is a monetary policy tool used by the central banks to stimulate the economy when the standard monetary policy tools like interest rates adjustments become less effective. During QE, a central bank purchases financial assets, typically government bonds, to increase the money supply and lower long-term interest rates. The goal here is to encourage borrowing and spending. Then we have QT, or quantitative tightening, which is the opposite of QE. It involves reducing the money supply and increasing interest rates by selling financial assets. This is done to control inflation and prevent an overheated economy. Central banks may use QT when economic conditions improve and there is need to unwind the stimulus measures implemented during periods of economic downturn. Next one is jobs market. This is also an important economic factor which monitors the unemployment rate. If we consider the post-World War II era up to today, the average unemployment rate in the United States has been approximately around 5%. Last and certainly not least, wars and conflicts. There is no specific measurement nor metric for this as far as I'm aware, but nonetheless, we should always be aware of different conflicts going on in the world. Those were the major economic factors that I make sure that I'm up to date on, because as the great Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Now let's see what I predicted last year. Here, this is it. By the way, if you want to watch the full video from last year, the link is in the description below. For reference, I have also added the results of the 2022 year. Now, if you look at the GDP, I have predicted that the first half of the year will be negative and then it will be positive. Everything so far has been positive and I believe the Q4 will also be positive. So as this is the first metric and I'm just getting warmed up, I gave myself a yellow rating. Next is the CPI. Last year, I predicted that by end of this year, we will have around 3 to 4% CPI. And look at that, the CPI reported in November was 3.1%. Next one is the stock market. And I predicted that the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 will be down by 10 and 20% respectively. This year, the S&P 500 has gone up almost 25% and the Nasdaq has gone up by almost 55%. Now, look at that. I have completely messed up this one. Then I predicted that the bond yields will be below 4% at the end of this year. Right now, the 5-year, 7-year and 10-year bond yield is below 4% and the 30-year bond yield is at 4%. Here, again, I gave myself a yellow rating because this was pretty close. Then the housing market, I expected this to go down and it really did go down. Then the interest rates, I predicted that they will be above 5% and look at that. Today they are between 5.25 and 5.5%. Monetary policy, I predicted that it will be quantitative tightening and it was quantitative tightening this year. The jobs market, I predicted that there will be an unemployment rate of over 4.5%. However, the unemployment rate this year is at 3.7%. So the job market and the GDP go hand in hand together here. Last thing that I made my prediction on was the war between Ukraine and Russia. And I predicted that it will have slowed down but not resolved. And that was actually the case. As you can see by the rainbow colors, I am as precise as an ape throwing darts at a wall. Since I did an outstanding job for predicting 2023, I am also gonna predict the 2024. So for 2024, the GDP, I believe it will be positive all year long. I believe the CPI will be above 2.5%. I believe the stock market will go up by 10 and 12% for the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 respectively. I believe that the bond yields will be around 3% by the end of the year. I believe the housing market will go up because the interest rates will go down. And I expect the interest rates to be between 4.5% and 5%. I made this estimation based on the information from the Fed that they will do 3 rate cuts in 2024. Monetary policy, I believe it will be quantitative easing. I believe that the unemployment rate will be between 4.5%. And as far as the world conflict goes, they will also not be resolved. Last year it was Ukraine and Russia. This year is Israel and Palestine. Next year it's going to be China and Taiwan, and so on. Now, how do I predict this? Well, there is this thing called the economic cycle, also known as the business cycle. The economic cycle typically consists of 4 phases divided into 2 groups of 2. Recovery and expansion, this is when the economy is going up, and slowdown and recession. This is when the economy is going down. Now, I have researched all the different economic factors that you have seen in the list before and how they behave in each phase of the economic cycle. For your viewing pleasure, I have summarized all of my findings into the following table. First up, we have the recovery phase. In this phase of the economic cycle, the gross domestic product is slowly rising, inflation is low, the stock market is going up, the bond yields are going down, because remember, Apple and gravity, interest rates start going down, monetary policy is generally quantitative easing, meaning money is being printed to stimulate the economy, unemployment rates start going down. The sectors of the stock market which typically perform well in this phase are industrials, materials, and real estate. The overall opportunities in the stock market start to go down in this phase. Then we get to the expansion phase. In this phase of the economic cycle, the gross domestic product is still rising. Inflation starts to rise as well. The stock market gains momentum and eventually gets into overvalued territory. Bond yields are still going down. Interest rates are also still going down because the Fed is asleep at the wheel. Monetary policy is still quantitative easing, meaning money printers are now working 24/7 to even more stimulate the economy, which at this point is too much, but this is a point for another time. Unemployment rates are still going down. Sectors of the stock market which typically perform well in this phase are technology and consumer staples, and the overall opportunities in the stock market are still going down. Then we get to the slowdown phase. In this phase of the economic cycle, the gross domestic product starts going down. Inflation gets into high territory. The stock market starts going down. Bond yields start going up. The interest rates start to rise sharply because the Fed woke up and is trying to steer the Titanic away from the iceberg known as a recession and in some cases depression. Monetary policy changes to quantitative tightening, meaning money printers are off and the shutters are fired up in order to cool down the economy, which, if you have been paying attention, is now way too late. Unemployment rates start going up because companies are now starting to lay off people in order to brace for the impact of the Titanic into the iceberg. Sectors of the stock market which typically perform well in this phase are materials, energy, and finances. The overall opportunities in the stock market start to slowly present themselves again. Finally, we get to the last phase of the economic cycle, which is recession, and as I previously mentioned, in some rare cases, depression. In this phase of the economic cycle, the GDP goes into negative, meaning the economy is shrinking. Inflation starts going down and eventually bottoms. The stock market plunges and eventually also bottoms. Bond yields are still going up and they eventually peak. Interest rates are still going up as the Fed is now fully woken up and is in panic mode, I might add. The monetary policy is still set to quantitative tightening. Now the shutters are working overtime and, surprise, surprise, they will overdo it once again. Unemployment rates are still going down. The sectors of the stock market which typically perform well in this phase are utilities, healthcare, and consumer staples. Lastly, the overall opportunities in the stock market are on every corner, but the problem for most people is fear. This is why only a few people are able to identify in which phase of the economic cycle we find ourselves in and are able and willing to act rationally and not emotionally. So, there you have it. That was a review of my 2023 predictions, a look into my 2024 predictions, as well as a short overview of the economic cycle. I am well aware that nobody can predict the future and that trying to predict the future is a fool's errand. I do this because it's fun for me and I don't have any friends nor hobbies. But I do own a camera and I have some tech skills. And that's it for today. If you find this video helpful, then please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comment sections below what do you think about my 2024 predictions. Also, in case you're interested in a full review of my stock portfolio for the year of 2023, make sure you check out my portfolio review video for the year of 2023. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video.